So, lights, camera, action. On this week's show, we have Latin jazz artist, percussionist, music producer, DJ, who's released over 20 singles and 16 albums, who's featured in the who's who of Latin American music and has performed or recorded with Lisa Stanfield, Imelda May, Mark Ronson, Simply Red, the James Taylor Quartet, Misha Paris, Incognito, and many, many, many more, and was one of the UK's earliest rappers who used to perform at the legendary Language Lab back in the day. We've got the one and the only SNOWBOY.
Yeah, here I am.
Here you are, my man.
Great to see you, Steve.
It's an honour.
Honour's mine.
Yeah, and I can't wait to get down to the nitty gritty and, you know, cover your kind of early history and also, you know, what you're up to nowadays. It's going to be amazing because, you know, you've worked with so many people and you've covered so many styles of music with jazz, funk, hip hop, you know, go-go and all that good stuff. Yeah.
Oh, well, great. Thanks. Well, fire away.
No, I can't wait to chat to you. First thing I always do, though, is a big, because we're in this lockdown session with the COVID virus, a big shout out to all key workers, doctors and nurses trying to battle it, trying to keep us safe.
Yeah. True.
So, right, SNOWBOY, first two questions I've got is, you know, whereabouts are you from and what was it like growing up as a, you know, as a nipper?
I live near and was brought up near Southend-on-Sea in Essex, and yeah, I mean, you know, this area of Essex was always incredible for music. I mean, always incredible for music. I mean, my first love before I started going to jazz funk clubs in the late 70s, my first love was rock and roll. Rockabilly, rhythm and blues. You know, there was a massive revival of rock and roll in the early 70s, and my brother was the second generation Teddy Boy and first generation rockabilly, and I kind of that was the soundtrack of the house. Within there was, like, as a 13, 14, 15-year-old, I was hearing rhythm and blues, Chicago blues, rockabilly, rock and roll, Cajun, Zydeco, gospel. You know, I was hearing all these styles. You know, and it was just like absolutely incredible. So vibrant down here, and I never really listened to much other music outside of that until I went to Southend Art College when I was 17, and all my friends there were all going to a club on Canvey Island. I didn't know at the time it was the biggest jazz funk club in the country.
Wow! What was the club called?
Jeff Young, the Gold Mine. And so I was dragged there, almost kicking and screaming, but I just went because, you know, that's where all my friends went. And when I went to the Gold Mine, I think that would have been October 78. It hit me like a ton of bricks. I mean, all of a sudden, there I'm used to listening to hillbilly and Cajun. All of a sudden, I'm hearing Philly soul. You know, I'm hearing P-funk. I'm hearing jazz. I'm hearing all these styles that are completely alien to me. But do you know what? It just, the whole thing hit me like a ton of bricks. And all of a sudden, I was out there from the following Monday, trying to collect whatever I could that I'd heard that night. It made such a massive impression on me. I mean,
that had a huge impact on your, basically the start of your musical kind of journey, really, in that kind of field.
It did, you know, and actually, I'll tell you what, it was an interesting thing. Like the main DJ there, Chris Hill, he is one of my best friends. Like now, you know, and I'll speak to Chris almost every day. 75 now, and I'll speak to him virtually every day on the phone, and outside of lockdown, I visit once a week. So there's a really long relationship, a friendship there. You know, it's quite amazing, and the man that kind of, you know, influenced me. So, but yeah, what an education the Gold Mine was. And then down the road there was its kind of nemesis, if you like, the 06 with Ian Redding and Merv Griffiths. Again, amazing. Had a record shop in the foyer selling the latest imports from the Record Man record shop in Rayleigh. So you could kind of hear it in the club, Ian play it, and then you could go out into the foyer and say to the guy, "What's this playing at the moment?" And they'd sell you the record. You know, it was quite mad. So I was really, really lucky in those early days to be swamped with so much music, and absorb it all, which I did. You know,
it's really, really incredible, because you really think that, you know, that you'd hear that kind of music like in central London, but really not in the outskirts where you was. I mean, it's quite amazing, really.
Well, yeah, but you see, I mean, that whole kind of jazz funk scene was much like, you know, it covered the home counties, you know, and it was enormous. It was kind of bigger than it was in central London, really. A lot of people were, you know, the Goldmine, for instance, on a Saturday night, you know, the club only held 300 odd people, but there was coaches every week, you know, and quite often you'd see, you know, G Bello there, or like from Light of the World, and all people like that, where they brought a coach load down from you know, from northeast London, or, you know, Tottenham or around there. And of course there was the Brixton Frontline used to come every week without fail, and there quite often would be a coach load of.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean, outside of obviously George Power, you know, the Crackers, of course. I mean, you know, Greg Edwards obviously lived in London, but almost all of those kind of big DJs in those days in the jazz funk scene, like Chris Hill, Jeff Young, Froggy, of course, Chris Brown, Sean French, Pete Tong, of course. Let's not forget Pete Tong, 78, one of the most important jazz funk DJs. You know, these were all Essex and Kent. Bob Jones, of course, like legend. You know, I'm Not Worthy. So yeah, a lot of people. You did have some incredible clubs in London, but as far as that whole jazz funk scene, you had to. It was almost. It was happening all. Yeah. Home counties. Yeah. So in the south of England, anyway.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. And who was basically influencing you, like musically wise, I suppose? Like, what kind of tracks were kind of, you know, you was thinking, wow, these tracks are like blowing me away.
Well, again, it was the DJs that I mentioned, you know, Chris Hill and Jeff Young at the Goldmine, Bob Jones in Chelmsford, and Ian Redding at 06. But they were, I was, you know, I wanted to hear the latest imports, the latest imports, soul, disco, and the jazz funk, particularly the jazz funk more than anything. The heavier, the better. You know, like all these DJs were giving me that, you know, and when I was at art college, I used to do the typical thing of you know, save up my dinner money all week, and then on every Friday I'd be going into the
record shop,
the local record shops, and buying whatever I could get my hands on for that money. And you know, funny thing is, though,
so Steve, you starved yourself for vinyl.
Yes, I did. Yeah, for vinyl. And you know, a really strange thing. It would never happen these days. You'd need all kinds of insurance and evidence and that. Do you know what? 17 years old. I loved them. I loved the music so much. I was collecting and hearing in the clubs. That at 17 years old, I started hiring the Goldmine out on Canvey every one Wednesday every month. Terrible name. We used to call it Jazz Functions. Eventually, I settled on two other DJs from around here, Grumpy Brown and Russ Bircham. But initially, it was other DJs. I used to bring other DJs in with me, hoping to impress their crowd. You know, like you do that silly thing when you're 17.
Yeah.
But anyway, I can't believe I never told my parents that I was going to hire the Goldmine. They would have gone mad because the guy said, Stan Barrett that had the Goldmine, he said, if you don't get it, he said the hire fee is £100. £100 in 1978.
That's big money then, wasn't it?
Oh dear. And I'm like a poor student.
That was like a year's worth of pocket money.
Well, I mean, mate, my late parents, they didn't have 2 pennies to rub together, you know, so I can't even believe that I was that stupid and naive to do that. The guy said it's £100 fee. He said, but if you get more than 100 people in, then you don't pay a fee. And so I agreed to that. I signed to it. They didn't even ask me what my age was. I shouldn't have even been in the club, let alone hire. So anyway, luckily, I mean, I was going around all the other clubs selling tickets out of my back pocket, and luckily, we did get more than 100 in, and I did that with my friends Russ and Grumpy from late 78 till 83. Wow. At the Gold once a month, and but just think, if that had been a result, if that had been a disaster, how could I have gone home to my parents who have got no money and say I owe £100? You know,
you loved and breathed the music and the scene so much that you put yourself on the line to do that.
I just wanted to, it's that thing, isn't it? It's the first reason that you become a DJ, is that you love the music so much, you want other people to love it as much as you do, don't you? That's the first. Yeah.
And what and out on the percussion side, because you started percussion at a very, very early age. What got you into the percussion?
So interesting that I started collecting percussion before I really started playing it, because of for two reasons. One, the music I was buying, like in all this jazz funk and jazz fusion, because there was a lot of jazz starting to get played in the late 70s, and I went really in at the deep end, and the harder the better, you know. And I was buying all these amazing jazz fusion albums, and listening to and anyway. But the thing that I really loved more than anything about these jazz fusion records was all these interesting sounds on there. I didn't even know it was even called percussion. You know, once I did, I started going on the back of the sleeve and writing down the names of the percussion instruments, and going into. We had a drum shop in my local town, funnily enough, and I used to go in there and say, "What's a cuica? What's a berimbau? They'd show me photos, and occasionally I would save up a little bit of money and buy some of these little percussion bits, because I just wanted to know what they sounded like. Also, Chris Hill at the Gold Mine, he always used to play bits of percussion over the mic while he was DJing, like just a tambourine or shake, or just something that was a bit showy. And as 17, 18, 19, I wanted to be Chris Hill. Do you know what I mean? You didn't see it as aping him or anything. I looked so amazing. I wanted to do that.
I've just bought some bongos actually. I've had them at one. It's quite difficult.
It is difficult, and of course at the time you don't realise that you're very naive. There wasn't really hardly any percussionists around in those days anyway in the UK. Of course, I didn't realise there was anything different between one Latin record and another. Of course, you know, Cuban music, Brazilian music, and all the depth of all of those different rhythms within there, Puerto Rico, Uruguay, Peru, you know, Colombia, you know, that's just the Latin American. Without the African, you don't realise, when you buy a set of congas, you don't realise that there is all that culture and technique.
Who was you picking up on from the records? The
percussion that I was, all the rhythms that I was familiar with were off of all of these many jazz records and jazz funk records that I was buying at the time. You know, percussionists like Aieto and Paulino da Costa and Ralph McDonald and Poncho Sanchez, Tito Puente, all these things. To me, it was just Latin music up to that point, but I was obsessed and playing them all the time. So when my teacher, who was a real legend, you know, Robin Jones, who died last year, unfortunately, of an old age, I'm glad to say. Up until Robin was teaching me, you know, I just knew and loved these rhythms. But when he started to actually show me, you suddenly thought, oh my God, this is much harder than I thought it was going to be. But I knew I was in for the long haul.
This kind of moves me on now to, you know, an important subject close to my heart, obviously hip hop. And before we was calling it hip hop, it was called rap. And I know, you know, back in the day, you was like, you know, you was a very, very kind of like early rapper on the mic. So how did you get into, like, you know, MCing or rapping?
Oh, it's a funny one, you know, because there's me again, Steve, with my mixed up head of all this music, you know, of all this rock and roll related stuff and all the jazz funk and the jazz fusion, and all of a sudden, Rapper's Delight comes along.
It blew your mind.
Absolutely blew my mind, like it did millions of people all around the world. And a few months after Rapper's Delight came out, I can tell you more or less what it was, because it was the record I took to this thing I'm about to tell you about was Christmas Rapping by Curtis Blow. So that would put it late '79. So what happened is so this one of these amazing local jazz funk clubs, the 06, with the DJ Ian Redding. So he was advertising a rapping competition. Now, what I didn't realise was, until I turned up, was that what the rapping competition was everyone was rapping over the top of Rapper's Delight. You know, so word for word. You know, what I'd done is
you made your own lyrics.
I'd written my whole lyrics and turned up with my Curtis Blow Christmas rapping. Anyway, I kept on badgering Ian all night, even after the competition. I said, look, you know, I've gone to all this effort. I didn't know. It was just and he went, look, all right. He said, you can do it. If it's rubbish, I'm going to turn the mic off. And anyway, so I went up there, and the club, there was 700-800 people in there, and so I went up there and I did this rap over the instrumental of Christmas Rapping, and the place just went berserk. And Ian was really excited, like the DJ, and he gave me this bottle of champagne like there and then, and said, oh, you know, this is amazing, blah blah blah. And anyway, there and then he got me to do it all over again. So because the crowd were really excited about it, so I started, like other people, started looking out for other new rap releases. There I am, obsessed already, and I mean obsessed with so many styles of music, and particularly hard Latin jazz. All of a sudden, I've got this rap thing in me, you know, and I was just thinking about that so often, and I would get up and rap like anywhere that would give me a chance. And anyway, one night before it was called the WAG, when it was in its original name, Whiskey A Go Go, I got taken to a club there. I don't know what night of the week it was. Must have been a midweek night. It was called Club Left, and it was run by Bernie Rhodes, who was the manager of the Clash, and Vic Goddard, as of the punk band Vic Goddard and the Subway Set. Anyway, I got dragged along there, and anyway, this DJ was playing this new release. I don't know what it was, a new rap. Anyway, I was a bit drunk, and I went over there and asked him what the record was, and the DJ said, oh, if you're interested in all this, he said, I run a rap night on a Monday night at Gargoyles, Bob Gossips. And I went, oh, amazing. I said, oh, I'm a rapper. And he went, and then he was, because I was drunk, and he was kind of not belittling me, but he was kind of, oh yeah, you know. And then he said, well, go on then. And so, and right there and then in our conversation, I started rapping over this record that was not on the mic, but to him. And he said, right. He said, you're on the guest list anytime you want to come. Said, and I said, well, I can't drive. I said, but I'll get there as soon as I can. And I went back to my mates who were there at Club Left, and I said, I've just been invited to rap at this rap club. I didn't even know it was called the Language Lab at that point. And anyway, it turned out the DJ was Nick Jones from who was in Funkopolitan. I think he was the guitarist. But Nick Jones and the hairdresser, very famous hairdresser, trendy hairdresser, James Cutts, they both ran the Language Lab. And anyway, I went down there, and but it was a bit embarrassing because my DJ name in those days before SNOWBOY was I used all the DJs like in the 70s. They always tended to have a road show, like a DJ road show, like even Froggy did, like Froggy's road show and the Fighting Machine road show, the blah blah blah. And I as a 17-year-old, I couldn't really think of a great DJ name. It wasn't really the thing. My actual surname is quite hard to pronounce. It's Cotgrove, Cotgrove. So my first name's Mark. So I called myself in the early days Mad Mark's Roadshow. Okay, but MARX. So when
I thought it was Mad Max instead of Mad Marks.
Yeah, well, that's it. Some people did, like Jeff Young at the gold mine, he would always refer to me as Max, blah, blah, blah. So I didn't really care either way. So anyway, so Nick, when I went down to the language lab on this Monday night, it was quite mind-blowing in actual fact. It was a funny club because you had to go up this lift into the club. And when you went in there, it was very kind of TV people and it was the comedy club in there as well. A lot of people never talk about this, like Alexis Sale and all this kind of Rick Mail and that, they were all in there. There was a theatre in the Gargoyles where the language lab was as well. So, and at that point, it was weird because the DJs and all the rappers were black, and the audience in the early days was entirely white. It was quite strange. As I say, it felt a bit like kind of media function or something. It was quite a trendy, kind of thing. Anyway, but Nick was really pleased to see me when I turned up, and he said about my rapping name, and I said Mad Marks, and he kept on introducing me as the Mad Rapper, which was horrible. It's even worse than the Mad Marks, but he used to always introduce me on the mic as the Mad Rapper. I think I did the language lab 4 times in the first part of the year, and also they did a big special at the language lab at the Camden Palace. I've still got the flyer for that somewhere, but I believe that the DJ, you might be able to correct me on this, but I believe the DJs were mastermind at language lab, or certainly went on to become mastermind, but there was no mixing in those. They didn't mix any records. There was certainly no scratching. They weren't even mixed. It was like, okay, what records are you rapping over? And mine were always Tom Tom Club, Genius of Love, and African Bambata, Jazzy 5, Jazzy Sensation. Who am I to? And I was quite surprised because some of the rappers were standing there where I'd memorised all of mine. Some of the rappers there actually stood there with. It was that raw in those days because don't forget there'd never been a club like Language Lab. There'd never been a rap night.
Who else was MCing? Was you got like Man Friday and Jive Junior there?
Well, funny enough, you mentioned those. That's exactly who I do remember. And there was 2 guys that were doing a kind of double trouble kind of thing. Others I don't remember. I do remember some just literally holding a bit of paper up in front of them with it written out. I never saw Jive Junior or Man Friday do that. That's for sure. But it was really exciting. There was no kind of battling in those days. No one really, because don't forget, we didn't really know about it in the UK at that point. Only what we'd read about. So
and also, as we said, it was called rap. It wasn't called hip hop, because we didn't coin that term hip hop till probably about 1983. Because before that, it was either rap or when tracks like Planet Rock, Pac Jam, Scorpio, all them kind of tracks come in, we called that electro or electro funk.
Yeah, that's right. No, that's true. Yeah, that's true. I remember thinking how amazing Jive Junior and Man Friday were. I never really got to know. See, this is the funny thing, is that I was a fish out of water in a sense because I was the only non-Londoner there, if you like, and I'd been taken up by a carload of friends every time. So before I went on stage and when I came off stage, I would be back in with my crowd of mates. I remember Man Friday coming over to me and saying that he was starting something at Titanic, and would I be interested in being a part of it? And I said at that point, look, I can't drive. I can't. I said, as much as I want to, I'm at the mercy of people driving me up in the car.
Far.
So yeah, too far. So unfortunately, I never went. I do believe that Titanic thing did happen in the end.
No, it did. Yeah, no, it did. Yeah, it did. I've got some tapes, live tapes from Titanic.
Have you? God Almighty, that's well rare.
I'll send you them. It's got Man Friday, and it's got loads of you know, those MCs on it. It's brilliant.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing.
Did you try any body popping or anything like that?
I had a go.
Did you have a dabble?
I could do robotics. I could do that. And soon as I started seeing breakdancing, I wanted to spin on my back like hundreds of thousands of others, and I could never exactly see how it was done. So I probably injured myself many times trying to do it. No, it was never. I always admired the breakdancers, and I mean, especially those early days. I know what breakdancing has gone on to now, which is obviously mind blowing. But there was something about those early days, especially like when Buffalo Girls came out, and the Wild Style film, and some of those more kind of poppier rap acts started getting into the charts. The Break Machine and all this for the first time.
I mean, like the video to them were brilliant, because you used to see like like the B-boys or the poppers, in those videos.
Yeah, that's right. Because I always remember reading in The Face a column by Robert Elms, and Robert Elms was talking about the Roxy in New York, and talking about people spinning on their elbows and on their back, and I just thought that was kind of writer's license. I thought that he's just making a point. And then one of my dearest friends, and still is to this day, he was one of the founder members of the band TaxiTalk. And they were on an American tour supporting Elvis Costello in '82. And when he came back off tour, he played me Planet Rock, African Bambaataa, or Soul Sonic Force, sorry, and Fearless 4, Rocking It. And he said that he'd been to the Roxy in New York, in fact, a couple of times while he was there on tour. He said, and these were the two biggest records, and they went out and bought them. Frankly, I didn't know what to. I mean, I love Planet Rock. I didn't know what to make of it, because it had such a different feel, didn't it? But Rocking It, Fearless 4, absolutely
rocking
blew my
it. She is rocking it. Rocking it.
And he was saying, oh, there was all these people. They were spinning on their heads and on their back, and I thought, wow. So what Robert Elms had said in The Face was true, but obviously I still hadn't seen it until going forward until Buffalo Girls came out. So
and Buffalo Girls come out. When was that? When was it first televised? Because I thought it was Top of the Pops, but you told me
it was the Tube.
The Tube, yeah.
Because I remember I was at a friend's house in Camden. We were watching it, and Jules Holland was saying that they were showing this thing exclusively, and when it came on, we just couldn't believe what we were seeing. I mean, like you remember, like millions of us remember that first time that you saw Buffalo Girls. Oh my God!
I mean, it's a great track, but the video to it was amazing, with Rocksteady crew. It cemented the DJs, the B-boys, the graffiti.
Yeah. No, that's right. Yeah, that's right. It was quite. Well, let's face it, we'd never seen anything like it, had we?
No, never.
All that you'd read about, there it was.
It was in front of us. Yeah.
In front of us. Yeah, in front of us.
And that's when breaking really started to take off.
Yeah, well, of course we had video players by then, didn't we? So people could rewind
and freeze frame it.
Freeze frame, yeah, freeze frame, yeah, freeze frame. One thing I did want to say in finishing about Language Lab is that you know what a gentleman Jive Junior was. You know, he was quite. I don't know how we are age group wise, but you know, he felt like an elder statesman to me. Just you know, like he seemed to have the biggest respect in there from everyone. And I always remember when we rapped at the Camden Palace, it was only him and me, and these two kind of double trouble kind of guys. And I remember Jive Junior coming up to me and suggesting that I put more hook lines into my rapping, because at that point I was still very much like telling a story, a la Rapper's Delight and all those kind of things. There was no kind of hook lines, you know. It was just like one great big long story, you know. So it was good sound advice.
Yeah, you know, Jive Junior and Man Friday. I mean, they done a track in 1983 called "Picking Up Sounds," and that it was a brilliant track. You know, for 1983, I mean, it was so ahead of its time.
Well, it was the most. It was. I think that was the nearest that we had to something that sounded like an American record, didn't it? In production value wise. But of course, that's the other funny thing, wasn't it? Is the fact that we all rapped with an American accent in those days. I mean, all of us still did. You know, I mean, I probably did my best to sound like Curtis Blow. I don't really, you know, I think my delivery in those days was quite energetic, like Curtis Blow's. I think we all were like that, and I don't suppose we really. Probably till London Posse came along, we probably didn't really get our own sound, did we? Like Rodney P and you know, those.
Big shout out to Rodney P. And actually, I'm going to tag Rodney P on this interview, because I know Jive Junior. He loved Jive Junior back in the day as well.
Yeah.
And talking of
Rodney and I are friends.
Huh?
Rodney and I are friends.
Are you friends as well? Yeah. Oh, brilliant. We're sending it. But talking of Jive Junior, I've got someone that knows Jive Junior, so I'm going to try and get to interview Jive Junior, which will be incredible.
Oh, mate, I hear he's a blues guitarist these days, which is one of my first loves, is the blues. I want to hear him play as well. I want to hear what he's say. You see, the thing is, Steve, I didn't live the London life within that world. You know, I came in, like say with Language Lab and that, I came in, did the thing, and then went home again. And in my manner, I was getting up left, right, and centre wherever I could and rapping. But I didn't live the life in London, you know, with all that crowd. You know, it'd be amazing to hear about what they've got to say on all this.
Well, we'll try and get you back in touch with Jive Junior. We'll try and set it up.
Well, no, just be lovely, mate. You know, just be lovely. You know, I remember all the jazz funk clubs I was going to. You never heard any rap records really after that for quite a few years, because a lot of the DJs dropped it like a lead balloon. Because they were songs, they didn't. If they weren't, didn't have that catch to it, like Rapper's Delight or whatever. Well, it wasn't really until like 1982 when you had like Planet Rock and tracks like the Message and Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. That it kind of panned out like a couple of years before then, didn't it? Yeah, that's right. And it's a weird one. Like, I don't know. I'm sure some of your viewers will know, but I remember around about that time going to see Curtis Blow at the Pink Elephant in Southgate, which used to be called the Royalty. Now, this was in midweek, and there must have been, and that venue holds about 2,000 people. I think the DJs were Steve Walsh and Sean French. Anyway, there must have been 50 of us, 50 people in there. Now, you can't say there's a rap scene in the UK in 81, 82, or whenever that would have been. You can't say that there was a rap scene. If Curtis Blow can't, like one of the big names of the scene at the time, if he can't pull 50 people in a 2,000 capacity venue, I mean, the show was amazing, by the way. Fair play to him. He went and did the full show. It was him and Davey D, who went on to be Davey DMX, of course, one for the treble. Absolutely. That must have been 80. I don't know when it was, because obviously Davey D was scratching. because I remember they were doing this thing, you know, rapping and scratching. So I think for anyone that reckons there was much of a scene around that time, I think there's rose tinted glasses there, personally, because I think that concert says it all, really, with the amount of people that turned out to see Curtis Blow, who was obviously one of the biggest. We all know that within a year or two, of course, it did go.
It wasn't really until 1983 when it started to basically, you know, get bigger and bigger.
Yeah. Well, you got Paul. Well, you think of the breakdancing, all the electro with Paul Trouble Anderson at the Electric Ballroom.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, the whole electro thing was so exciting, wasn't it? Pumpkin and
Pat Jones. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, those street sounds compilations.
That was great, wasn't they? Yeah. Because you know, you could get all them really great tracks on the one album, and you could save yourself a few pounds, you know, on from buying the 12-inch import.
And not only that, where were you going to buy them from anyway? I mean, I knew, I remember speaking to the importer a few years ago from those days, Greyhound, and they said like they were scared of those records. They hardly bought any in. And
yeah,
you weren't getting...
I was only getting a few of my early ones from like HMV in Oxford Street and
Groove Records.
Our Price as well in Lewisham sold some old electro, because back then you had like a rap section and you had an electro section. There was no hip hop section around in the record shop. It was either rap or electro.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's right. That's right. I found that whole electro thing really, really exciting. You know,
that's great, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah. It's so exciting. But again, the strangest thing is that because of my friend Paul from TaxiTalk, I was going to all my jazz funk clubs and jazz dance sessions and one thing and another, but I was also going to alternative music clubs with him because he was my mate and I was going with him. And I was hearing really hot imports, black music imports that you weren't hearing in the jazz funk clubs. And also I was hearing like something like the Mud Club with Jay Strongman, and you were hearing rap records there where, I mean, I don't even know where you could buy them from. As you and I have just established, there was hardly any. No. There was hardly any shops that sold them. I mean, Chris Sullivan, the WAG, Chris told me the other day. He said before the Language Lab, there were a few rappers around that they would get up and rap at the Beat Route or the Kilt for his clubs there. So, but obviously, Language Lab was the first of its kind. But you think that what Chris was doing was the alternative, wasn't it? The Beat Route and the Kilt and all this kind of stuff. So you were hearing this kind of rap was, in some ways, was considered the alternative to you know, up until this whole kind of breakdancing and the hip hop thing. I was 83 probably was when it really went mad, wasn't it?
It was as soon as the Buffalo Girls video hit, that's when it started to slowly, you know, get bigger and bigger, and things like Street Sounds, the Wild Style film, you know, and then basically like in 84 with Beat Street and Breakdance, it really started to kick off. Yeah.
No, that's right. It was quite exciting time.
Yeah, and documentaries like Style Wars and like books like Subway Art, you know, that's when the elements really started to expand.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, my head was completely exploding with all this music, you know, like
it was, yeah.
God Almighty, yeah.
You know, when did you carry on like rapping, or did you kind of stop at any stage?
Well, like carrying on from those days, I got involved playing percussion with quite a heavy electronic industrial band called Dimage. Funny enough, we've got a big box set coming out soon. And so I was playing percussion with them, and it was one of the songs that I did this rap on. Anywhere I could get on the mic, I was. And then all of a sudden, the Grandmaster Melly Mel, The Message came out. And up to that point, I mean, I had this obsession with Fab Five Freddy, Change the Beat. You know, like all my stuff was much more like a cross between that and kind of Sugar Hill Gang kind of stuff. But that low slung kind of Fab Five Freddy style, that was kind of what I was into, but still telling a story. And all of a sudden, Grandmaster Melly Mel came out, The Message, then I knew it was time to stop.
He was so incredible, wasn't he?
It was well. What it was, Steve, is I started to write a lyric along those lines, and I thought, you know, I live in a little town near Southend-on-Sea. I don't know what it's like living in the ghetto. Yeah, and all of a sudden I was writing, and I suddenly thought, what am I doing? I could see all of a sudden that record showed where it was going, and it did.
Because the message was such a powerful record about that time in the South Bronx. You know, I know what you're saying. You know, you're sitting in your bedroom, you know, in a little place outside Southend, and there was no comparison, was there? You can't write about, you know, stuff like that.
I've never been, for all the things that I am and all the things that I'm not. One thing I'm not is fake. And I just couldn't do it. I suddenly realised the game was up for me.
Yeah, I mean, the message was just such an incredible track. I mean, you know, it blew our minds when that came out.
Yeah, it was a game changer, wasn't it? A game changer.
Complete game changer.
But you also knew that was the shape of things to come, didn't you? After that,
yeah,
you know, when it started getting serious, you know.
And also, SNOWBOY, you're a massive fan of go-go, the Washington go-go music.
Yes.
Which I am as well. I absolutely love go-go. I mean, you know, Arcade Funk, as you know, is one of my most favourite tracks of all time.
Yeah.
And Trouble Funk Express. But I mean, you run really deep, you know, into the vaults of go-go. I mean, you're a huge fan, aren't you?
I am, yeah. I mean, I you're right. I really do run deep with go-go's. Since obviously it's the funk, which I'm obsessed with, but obviously the percussion and being a percussionist as well. I mean, I was buying that stuff before I knew it was called go-go. You know, just stuff on DETT, Max Kidd's incredible label. It wasn't to that whole kind of dirt box warehouse thing where I was getting friends coming home from London with Jay Strongman and the guys DJing and saying that they're, you know, all talking about go-go and all this kind of stuff. And I worked out it was the stuff that I've been buying, like Trouble Funk and what have you, because we didn't know the history of that stuff at that point, did we? Like, it was from DC. I'm talking about
Reds and the Boys and all that.
Yeah, Roy Reds and Boys. Yeah, obviously a little bit later, going into this when it really exploded in London. I was so crazy about go-go at the time that, oddly enough, I was just talking to you about this industrial electronic band Damage that I did this rap on. The guy that had that band, he said he wanted to start a record label. He's a hi-fi obsessive, really dear friend, still very dear friend of mine, Bill Bailey, his name is. Bill said, as a hi-fi buff, he said, I love everything about hi-fi and the sonics, and he said, but I don't actually know what the process is with records. So he said that he wanted to see how records were demoed, made, and distributed. Anyway, he asked me if I had any ideas, would I like to do something? And this was probably in 84. And at that point, I was really gone absolutely berserk on go-go. And I said, actually, yeah, there is something I'd like to do. I had this idea of doing a 3-track EP of all the stuff that I was currently into. The A-side was a go-go track called Bring On The Beat. And I'd love to say that was the first British go-go record, but of course they beat me. I got beaten to that there was a cover version of Bustin' Loose, wasn't there, that got released, I think, on a major label. Recorded this thing. The A-side was go-go called Bring On The Beat. And that's me kind of rapping, chanting on it, as well as playing the percussion. I wrote the song. And the B-side was a rap called Snowboy's Rocking the Mic, which was my kind of Fab Five Freddy thing. And then there's an out-and-out Afro-Cuban, what's called rumba, called Wawanko RJ, which is dedicated to my percussion teacher. And that kind of EP was where I was at musically in my head at that time. So it was really exciting. He allowed me to do that. He paid to get it demoed and then get it pressed up. We all stuck the sleeves together. He had the sleeves printed, but he couldn't afford to get them. So we all sat at my family's house sticking the sleeves together for 750 copies, and we had to stick the So true, we talk about independent records, mate. That was a that record.
The good old days.
Good old days. And when it was pressed up, he went round all the London record shops in his car, going in there asking if anyone wanted to take copies. And do you know what? He went off to America to work, and he went to DC and got a copy to Max Kidd, who owns, like, obviously the one of the main men ever in go-go music, the owner of TTED, and he got a copy to the main radio DJ Moon Man, and I can't remember the name of the record shop now. It's the one you see in that go-go documentary on BBC, on the Arena one. He went in there and they took copies. They were really excited because it was this British guy, and do you know what? A friend of mine, a very, very dear friend of mine called Eiley Brown, who on Facebook is known as Nebraska Black. Eiley was very, very right in the middle of that whole go-go thing, and he looked after Max Kidd, right, and in fact up until when he died, and he told me about 10 years ago, going through all of Max's stuff, he said, you know, he said, I found your record in Max's archives. So it was really exciting knowing that he kept it.
I don't even know if I've heard it. Is it on YouTube or anywhere like that?
I've never allowed it to be on there.
You got to pull it on there.
I'm not that proud.
You got to pull it on there.
I might.
I'm gonna try and get a copy.
I'll certainly send you. I've got a copy. I've got a copy in front of me.
Wow.
There it is. That's the record. And there's the, if you can see it on the B side, Bring on the Beat, Snowboy's Rocking the Mic, and Wawanko RJ. Yeah, I'll send you it, Steve.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Who done the little what's that on the back of it? Like a little cat character?
Yeah, I did. Well, obviously I was an artist. I went to art college, didn't I? So I was into, that was my little thing. This kind of 50s cartoony kind of cat, you know, with skewed features. I don't know. It's all very independent. I did the artwork, and it's all printed on cartridge paper, and that's incredible, Mark. Incredible history. It was quite mad, you know, because going forward a few years from there, I'd met Jonathan Moore from Cold Cut on a few occasions, and obviously an amazing bloke, fantastic DJ. In fact, I'll tell you what, in actual fact, the first time I met John, he was punching out copies of his white label, that first, what was it, Say Kids, What Time Is It? Or wasn't it? Or something like that little mix thing they done. Yeah, Say Kids, What Time Is It? With Chitty Chitty Bang Bang in it and all that. Yeah, with I'm the King of the Swingers. Yeah, I'm the King of the Swingers. Yeah, it's great, really good track. That's right, yeah. So that's the first time I met him. He was knocking that out at the time. And anyway, a few years later, John calls me and he said, I've been in Reckless Records. He said, and your first record was on the wall. He said, and I never even knew that you know, obviously I know you as a percussionist. I didn't even know you'd made it. He said, and I said, I didn't know you knew all about go-go percussion. And he said, we're making this track. He said, will you come down and play on it? And it was Stop This Crazy Thing. So, which was what, 88? Yeah, towards 88, end of 88. With Junior Reid from Black Uhuru on vocals. And that's amazing. I was in there, complete self-indulgent, doing all this go-go percussion. Tons of, like, I think 12 or maybe 14 overdubs of percussion, so they could take it what they. Yeah, it's quite good. On one of the remix 12 of it, there's there is one of the mixes is just the percussion. I've never stopped collecting go-go. I've been working on a discography of old school up to 1990 for years. I mean, it's as complete. I've seen so-called discographies on the internet, and which are nowhere near like the size of mine. You know, I've been really. I don't know what to do with it, frankly, but I've spent so long on it. But
you literally live and breathe music. I mean, you know.
Yeah, because on top of that, I mean, we're talking about all this, which I've never spoken about before, to be honest with you, because it's always been about all my Latin jazz recordings. You know, because after Bring On the Beat came out, that 12-inch there, then my next 12-inch single, a folk label, local around here, Waterfront, then they heard that and they said, do you want to make a record for us? And I did this samba and mambo double-sided 12-inch called Mambo Teresa. And then BGP asked me to do a record, and then Acid Jazz formed. And then Giles said, you know, do you want to make an album for Acid Jazz? And I think my album was like the second or third album on Acid Jazz in 1989. So, you know, there's all that, if you like, my real band leader kind of percussionist kind of career. But what you're talking about here, I've never really spoken about in an interview before in 35 years. It's quite funny actually talking about it.
But it's really interesting talking about it, and it's really important to talk about, because basically, you know, this is kind of like your roots.
It was almost like an alternate world that I was living in, running alongside my career, if you like, because by then I was off touring with pop bands and making my own Latin jazz releases and one thing and another.
I think it's absolutely remarkable, your history. I mean, you know, it's really kind of, you know, what you've told me is really kind of gelled it all together. I mean, it's remarkable.
Oh, thanks. Thank you, mate. Yeah, thanks. It was, the funny thing is, amongst all of this was obviously we were my percussionists. I'd carried on DJing and collecting like heavily. Luckily, I was still living with my parents, so I only had housekeeping to pay. So I was just spending a ridiculous amount of money every week. It didn't seem ridiculous. I didn't have anything else to spend the money on. Yeah, I was living at home.
How much vinyl have you actually got?
Over 30,000 vinyl. Yeah. There's a whole room full. I have had more. At one point, I was the official discographer for Sugar Hill Records. If you see any Sugar Hill compilations, like the big box sets, you look on there and there's all the discography, and you'll see it's by me.
Wow.
And I was collecting all the Sugar Hills, and so stuff like that all went. Apart from I kept the half, the dozen incredible tracks.
Oh.
I've thousands over the years, but I've still got about 30,000. Yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do.
Out of all those tracks, what would you say was probably some of the rarest tracks that you've got?
Oh, well, I've got. I think being such a hardened collector, and actually I've let quite a few go over the years of these. I have got quite a few one-off like test pressings, of funk records, some soul things, rhythm and blues. They are literally like the only copies. I've got a few quite amazing pieces. I don't like them being digital, but when I was compiling for Sugar Hill, they kind of gave me the keys to the archive, if you like, and I've got a few unreleased things there, and I've got some unreleased go-go as well, which Eiley Brown sent me over. The amazing Eiley, what a beautiful man. So I suppose even though they're digital, they're still they're never going to come out the archives, really. So but yeah, tons and tons of, because the thing is, been collecting more than anything, collect a lot of soul, but funk, is something that I've always collected, even since in the late 70s. in the upfront jazz funk clubs, occasionally they would drop the odd older funk track, and they used to term it as street funk in those days in the late 70s. I'm sure Barry Sharper will back me up on that. Is that so you'd be hearing the latest imports, and then they might play like an old Oliver Sane track, or I remember hearing Soul Power 74 for the first time, you know, at the Goldmine as an oldie, you know, all this kind of stuff. So I was always loved that old funk sound. So always had an opportunity of, whenever I had any opportunities, I would be collecting that, and never really stopped. It really culminated in Kev Darge and I starting Deep Funk in 1995. Well, Kev started it. I came in. I was there on the very first one, and then between he and I, moving forward, we kind of decided that we were kindred spirits in kind of independent funk releases on obscure labels that we felt were as good as the classics. You see, this is the problem with Deep Funk, Steve, is what people call Deep Funk these days, or in these compilations. They think that Deep Funk has to be raw and rough around the edges. That was never what Kev and I were looking for. All we wanted were records. All we tried to establish at Deep Funk were records that sounded as good as the established classics, you know, that Barry and everyone had established in the Rare Groove days in the 80s. You know, we were trying to establish a whole new load of stuff that no one seemed to know, or that wouldn't touch with a barge pole, that we believed in. And I mean, the main place for buying funk was Soul Bowl, which is obviously the main Northern Soul warehouse, of course, as well. Now, one of my close friends, Andy Davis, luckily used to work at Soul Bowl, and he was always tipping me off when they had some funk that was going to be going on the list, and he'd contact me the day before and playing to me down the phone, or anything interesting to you, so I was getting hold of all these funk records before they were going on the list, which was amazing, you know. And for peanuts, I mean, I would never spend, all these people spending £1,000 and £1,500, I would never have spent that. The records that Kev and I were playing might have gone on to have been worth that, but we were only paying £5 and £10 for those records, because when Deep Funk started at Ormonds in January '85, from what I understand, what the record dealers were telling me, people were still chasing the classics. Like at a Southport weekend, or I would go to Soul Bowl's record stall, and they might have 600 funk 7-inch singles, and considering there's 3,500 people there, everyone's just going through everything, looking for stuff they know, whereas I was going through all these funk 45s, being one of only 3 or 4 people over the weekend that were looking through the funk 45s. I was looking for stuff that I looked interesting, that I didn't know, rather than was looking for the stuff that that everyone else was chasing. And you know, you suddenly realise there was
proper digger.
Yeah, there's so much ridiculous. There was such a ridiculous amount of funk out there in those days that no one was even bothering to touch. It was incredible. But that was the sound of Deep Funk, was stuff that sounded as good as the classics. Not because they were rough, or because they were, you know, badly recorded. This is what people think Deep Funk is. No, that wasn't what Kev and I were looking for. We wanted something that sounded like the JBs, that wasn't the JBs, you know, that was on some tiny label.
Yeah,
that could be a future anthem. That's what we were looking for.
Can you tell me also? Can you tell me about the your band, the Latin Section?
Yeah, I just came up with there was no such band originally as SNOWBOY in the Latin Section. It's just that when I released my second single, which was out and out Latin, I didn't really know what to call it, and what name to go under. So I still kept the name SNOWBOY, and I just had this name SNOWBOY in the Latin Section. It sounded great at the time. It sounded like a nice name, but it was just a studio project, and it wasn't till I released my second album on acid jazz, I think around about 1990, that I started to get forced into playing live. Before then, I was just bringing in all the musicians that I knew from the Latin world that were amazing players. It was just a studio project name, if you like, because I was so busy going off touring, doing pop stuff with other people and one thing and another, that I didn't really have time to form my own band. So I was really lucky that people were putting my records out, even though I wasn't getting any pressure to go and actually go on tour. And anyway, one day in about 1990, I got a call from an agent saying, you know, your name keeps coming up, and I was wondering if you're interested in doing any concerts. The acid jazz were getting fed up with me because they're saying, well, we're putting these records out, paying all this money, and you're not gigging to promote them. So I saw the sense in that, and so that was when SNOWBOY and the Latin Section kind of went out as a live band around about that kind of time, 90, 91, 92. I did a tour in Japan in 1990 with a smaller version of that. For my third album, Something's Coming, which was 92, I think, then I was really put a full band out, like an 8-piece on the road, which was quite expensive. But they were all musicians that had been playing on my recordings anyway. I just said, like, I'm going to go out on the road. Do you want to do the gigs? And almost all of those guys, you know, that was 1992, and almost all of those guys at the time of doing this interview in 2020, almost all of them are still with me. So quite amazing.
Can you give me some of your biggest highlights so far?
Well, one's got to be that in 1990, I did the very first tour with Lisa Stansfield, which I'm still with Lisa now. In fact, I co-produced the last album with her called Deeper, which I'm very proud of that album. I'm still with her now. She's like a sister to me now.
I'm a big fan. She's got an amazing voice as well. I'd love to interview Lisa Stansfield.
Oh, she's amazing, mate. I'm sure that can get done, no problem. She's an amazing. Now, that first tour, it was all arenas and one thing and another. It was so exciting. And then we went off and did Rock in Rio with her at Maracanã Stadium, right, in Rio, which I don't know if you know, but Maracanã holds 250,000 people. So there we are. There's been some amazing stuff over the years, mate.
And what else, Mark, what else are you up to nowadays then? Because you're DJing down at the South London Soul Train, aren't you?
Oh, yeah. South London Soul Train. You know, mate, what I've been really lucky about is that obviously I did, if I can just quickly tell you just a quick timeline, because the whole Deep Funk thing with Kev and I, the amazing Greg Belson in support, amazing times, and I had to stop that because I had this real ultra heavy jazz dance session at the Blue Note in Hoxton Square at the time called the Hi-Hat, and I found the whole thing too intense. I was playing breakneck speed jazz fusion, so like the heaviest dancers known to man in the daytime, and then going on to Madame Jojo's, and then playing like the heaviest funk known to man, and lugging all those records around. The whole day was so intense. Sometimes I think I was going mad. So I was really lucky with that whole kind of jazz dance session, playing to these very, very heavyweight dancers. And then I got an opportunity when Keb finished at Madame Jojo's. They suggested that I come and do either carry on with Deep Funk or start a new session, and did this session called the Good Foot. And the Good Foot was every Friday night, and that was playing all 60s and 70s funk, soul, ska, rhythm and blues, northern, all kinds of things. And I was so proud of that residency for 4 or 5 years. But what happened is, while the Good Foot was on a Friday, I got a call from a friend of mine called Mickey Smith, who in the early 90s, he kept on flying me to Hong Kong to DJ for him. He was really running the show in Hong Kong, in the early 90s. Put on these amazing events, And I was going over there playing predominantly more funk, rare groove, and a bit of jazz, but on the whole, it was much more funk. So anyway, it was great to hear from Mickey again. And Mickey was saying, "I've got this, this venue in Peckham. It's a converted warehouse called the Bussy Building, and I call it the CLF Art Cafe."
It's an amazing venue, isn't it? It's brilliant.
Four floors. I mean, obviously it's modified. It still essentially looks like a warehouse, doesn't it? It still feels like a warehouse because it is really, And but
it reminds me where you play upstairs. It reminds me of that kind of like the WAG Club a little bit with the with the columns in the middle. It's brilliant.
Yeah. Oh no, it was amazing when Mickey contacted me. He said, "I'm starting this session called." I think he told me it was called South London Soul Train. But anyway, he asked me to come and DJ for him. I went down there. There wasn't many people there, and he paid me and sent me home at midnight. And I thought, oh well, it was great to see Mickey again. And anyway, he calls me a couple of years later and says, "It's really taken off. Do you want to come back and guest again?" And I went down there, guested for him on the main floor. Then he decides to open up a second floor and asked if I wanted to do that. And I said, "I'd like to do a funk room." Then that was once a month. Then it worked out, it was twice a month. Well, before the lockdown, it was every Saturday night. It's paradise, there were over 1,000 people there every Saturday night. And
it's mobbed. It's absolutely mobbed. And the great thing about it is that, you get like young and old in there as well, and everybody's jamming together. It's brilliant.
It's just ridiculous, 10 till 5, and you're just playing every permutation of funk known to man, and they love it, And first of all, I thought people I kept seeing these phones going up, and I assumed that they were just taking selfies. And yeah, some of them are taking selfies, but a lot of them were shazamming. They wanted to know what the tunes were. This is quite a young crowd, and this was all new to them. And do you know what, mate? An old man like me, nearly 59. To be able to play to a whole new generation like that, honestly, you have to. Like Mickey has got, Northern Soul on the top floor, contemporary stuff in the basement. Mickey's playing all the jump up, party bangers right across every black music permutation, and a live band every week. Could be Fred Wesley, it could be Bookie Leo's kind of Fela Kuti Afrobeat thing. It could be a funk quartet. So he's giving a live act every week and 4 floors of music and all the dream DJ lineup.
Oh, it's incredible, Mark. It's incredible. When I'm driving my London black cab in London, if there's any tourists in my cab, I always say to them, go to the South London Soul Train in Peckham because it's absolutely brilliant. Also, who else do you get to DJ alongside you?
I have, oh my God, I have Perry Louis from Jazzcotech, Dean Rudland, DJ One of a Kind from Guernsey, incredible DJ, Anthony Sturgeon from Damn Funky in Norwich, Lee Strongman, whenever I know he's over from LA, he's there, Mo Manley from Chicago, when Mo's over. We were just about to have Chris Sullivan, funny enough, from the WAG. And I've had some that are now resident there that were just guests before, like Andy Smith and Andy Lewis, and the great Northern Soul DJ Rob Messer, who played a lot funkier there, a real legend. So yeah, I'm really fortunate to have a lot of real heavyweights.
Great DJs around you.
That's the thing. That's the thing with the DJs is that they've got to know how to work that room, because 500 people in that room. There's no good just having collectors DJs in there, that which are amazing and very important, but that is a hard room to work. It looks easy, but believe me, you lose their attention and they're going to go off into another room.
And the maddest thing is, it's something you don't really see anymore, is that you're all playing 7-inch vinyl 45s.
Yeah, that's right. There are no CD decks in that room anyway. It's just record decks. So that's great. And I'll tell you what, the younger crowd, as you say, it's a mixed age group, but predominantly young, and they love seeing the vinyl being played. They love it.
Mark, what are you currently up to? You working on any other little bits and pieces, or?
In lockdown, all I'm doing is I'm doing a ridiculous amount of practice every day. Quite on it.
I would have loved to have seen you like have a little dabble.
Yeah, hang on.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Oh, that's excellent. Oh, brilliant, Mark. Listen, it's been.
I was holding the drum up with my knees there. I was tipping, so that's why I stopped.
Nah, listen, listen. This has been an absolute brilliant interview. I mean, you know, you've blown me away once again with the history. It's been amazing.
Thank you. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure.
And listen, we could speak for another few more hours with this stuff, but you know.
Well, I'm not going to get into the habit of talking about all of this. I've never done it before, and it's been really lovely, Steve, to actually have a good chat about all this today. And for the people the many hundreds and thousands that watch your channel, hopefully they've seen another side to me today, which is something I never really even talk about. So,
you know, and I think it's really, really important that you've come forward and you've touched on that piece of history, because, you know, it's an important part of your life. So,
yeah, I was deadly serious as well, believe me.
Yeah.
Deadly serious. So, yeah, thank you.
No, Mark, listen, absolutely amazing. And listen, anybody watching this, subscribe to this channel, press the subscribe button wherever it is. And, you know, I've interviewed like Public Enemy, I've interviewed Man Parish, I've interviewed Nucleus, I've interviewed DJ Cash Money, DJ Qbert, Rodney P. London Posse. I mean, I've interviewed Barry K. Sharp. You know, I've got some incredible interviews to watch as well.
Well, absolutely amazing. I mean, who you've interviewed him, and that Barry's interview was incredible. You know, and Rodney P. Like amazing. They're all amazing. Well done. Well done. What you're doing, I'll tell you now, Steve. What you're doing is really important documents. I'm not saying mine's important, but what you're doing is you're seeing everyone face to face, and
I'm getting it from the horse's mouth.
Know it or not, whether you know it or not, Steve, what you're doing is really important documentation, and I thank you very much for you doing this.
No, I really appreciate it, SNOWBOY. And also, you know, I'll take my hat off to you as well for your DJing and bringing the funk and the jazz and the percussion and everything to everybody's ears.
Thank you. Thanks very much, mate. All the best. I'll see you after the lockdown.
100%. I'll be down Soul Train. And listen, my man, keep safe, all right? Keep safe.
Thank you, and you, mate. Everyone stay safe.
Definitely.
Cheers, mate.
Peace.